Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we're going to take a look at the season 2 of the Take the Initiative Top Cut tournament. So I've talked about this specific tournament in a couple of videos before, where I've introduced pretty much every single deck list, and now this tournament is over, so I'll be able to see what happens and when we can learn from it. So today, joining me on the very first guest on THT is Hippo, which is nonetheless then the winner of the tournament. Hi Hippo, how's it going?
Hello. It's going great, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So let's move on to the bracket and the way the tournament went a little bit. So as you can see, though the meta was, I think, relatively representative to what you can expect. I think the only major thing is like I think Boba and Boba was very well represented. Maybe Han a little bit overrepresented because they were like there were three Han grain. So maybe Han a little bit overrepresented and maybe Vader underrepresented. No Vader grain whatsoever in top 16. So, but yeah, overall a pretty, I think, a relatively representative meta. I think the biggest upset of the first round was Al being able to get through Breaker playing Boba Green. I think this matchup is very bad for Tarkin, so it's a miracle that he managed to win 2-0. And then so we had a lot of great players, a lot of people who've basically played the previous seasons of Take the Initiative. And also some players coming from the outside. We had, for example, X2, who is the winner of the 5K tournament in Orlando, playing the guy who basically put Vader Blue on the map. And this time he was playing a very interesting Boba Blue deck. And so he made it to the semifinal, only losing to Hippo. And then, so me personally, I got stopped by Hippo in the quarterfinals. And then we had a final Rebel Resource versus Hippo. So if people don't know Rebel Resource, he has his own YouTube channel, and in my opinion, he's probably the most accomplished. I would say the most dedicated Sabine Yellow players in the world. Like at least one of the most dedicated. Like I don't know anybody else who's played as much Sabine Yellow as he has. He was playing Sabine Yellow before the release of the game, and he's basically played this deck almost exclusively. And he's been playing a lot of tournaments. He won the 1K Madison tournament with his deck, so he's definitely a very good player. So basically, almost only good players in this top 16, and that's why this tournament is so interesting. Is because there's so many good players who take part in it. Um, so um, so that the final was basically Hippo versus Rebel Resource, and Hippo won the tournament with a 2-1 record. So Hippo, can you tell us a little bit more about the way the tournament went, like the different matchups? Very quickly go over like the different round that you had to play on, and give us your impression.
Yeah, I think the opponent I feared the most was in the top 16 because as you may know, I hate playing against Krennic. I have a very bad record when I'm playing Han against Krennic. And the games were, especially the third game, was very tough for me, and I still think it was one of my most intense games and the biggest comebacks. At some point, I was like 0 to 19 on damage in that game, but I was able to pull through.
So you're talking
So
about
yeah,
the game versus
the next
Django.
one was yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was insane, at least from my perspective. But I know that emotions tend to run wild when you are playing in games like that. Next up was a matchup against you, and like in many mirrors, it came down largely to who drew better. Uh, so yeah, then that was the X2 against Boba Blue. I haven't played Boba Blue before that, and before we play tested it a little, but I was feeling quite confident against heavy control with Han. Uh, and then there was the final against Rebel Resource. I think it was. besides the first round against Django, those were the closest and most intense games of this top cut for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's safe to
Yes.
say that our game was the least close because, yeah, it's a matchup where, I mean, for people who saw the game, it was very unfortunate. But yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I mean, definitely like defeating me, defeating X2, Rebel Resource. It's quite a lineup of players that you've managed to defeat to get to the final with this beautiful deck. Which, as you know, I've been absolutely crazy about this deck for a very long time. I beat you with that deck in the semifinal of the previous season.
Yeah.
So the first question I want to ask you is what made you want to play the hand green? We go into the specific of the deck later on, but first of all, what made you want to play this deck?
No, it's really hard to answer that question. I think that at this point it was the deck I felt most confident about because I see two lines of preparing for a big events. Some people like Rebel Research, for example, of or like SIP, who's as you know is from Poland as well, tend to play with the same deck over and over and over again. And there are people that try everything that is out there, and I'm somewhere in between because I played quite a few decks, but for example, I don't have too much experience with playing control or heavy control, so I haven't played with those decks. So basically, the choice for me was between Han, Boba Green, and Sabine Yellow because those are the three decks I have most experience with, and I have the most fun with Han, so I went with Han.
Okay, so now let's talk about the list. So there's a couple of very interesting choices about this. I mean, to be honest, like I think the core is very much there. We're still playing the Echo Base and not the ECL. We're still having very few rebels. There's no rebel synergies whatsoever. Uh, and then there are some interesting choices and some other interesting take that you have that I would like to ask you about. And obviously, uh, nobody has time to playtest everything, and I'm always interested to know what are the other hand player, what are they playtesting, what do they like to, what did they discover, what are they feeling very confident about. So here's the first question: is I think one of the great cards that you've been playing here this tournament that served you very well was the regional governor. We all remember that regional governor that you got against X2 that basically named Avenger, and it turns out that X2 had basically two Avengers in hand that when that happened, and it was absolutely brutal. Tell us a little bit more about regional governor. Is there like uh, how are you feeling about this card after the tournament?
Yeah, it's a I I think that it's not a card that you will use every single game. But I would still not cut this from this list because I still think it's he can she can be very clutch in close games. And thanks to Ewing reinforcement, you don't have to pay aspect penalty for her. But in some situations, even playing her for 4 resources is definitely worth it. Like with the game you mentioned against X2. I put her in there mainly to counter Avenger because in my experience against playing against Krennic or other green villain control like Aiden, the Avenger is the thing that hurts me the most because I don't have like an easy answer to it. I can put more units on the board to kind of like slow it down. I have bright hopes to stop it for a turn or so, but I don't have a permanent solution for it. So I'm hoping to either spark of rebellion it or name it with regional governor. Of course, she's more versatile than that. Uh, Depends on the matchup. She can like name for a cause I believe in. Although in the final, even though I called it, I think it was in the first game. It didn't matter. but still she can be very helpful in close games.
It did matter actually. I don't know if you rewatched that game, but when you played that regional governor, Ryan had four calls I believe in hand, and he resourced it after he knew he was not going to kill that governor anytime soon. Yeah.
I,
So
but I still think yeah, okay. No, never mind. I will rewatch it
yeah,
probably
it was
soon.
it was good. It was good in that game. Anyway, I think I'm just gonna ask you a global question first. Is if you were gonna be because here's the thing, we the tournament happens and then it's the longest tournament you can play on because it takes time over multiple weeks. So by the time you start a tournament, by the time it ends, there's sometimes multiple weeks that happened. So obviously, in the sense you have the time to play a lot of games. In real life, you have the occasion to play a lot of tournaments, and therefore, very often the deck that you end up winning with or like playing with is not really the deck you would want to play at that time because until then your mindset has evolved. So my question to you is, if you were going to be playing a tournament with this deck, what would you change?
Yeah, I've played quite a few games with Han after submitting the list, and it evolved quite quite a bit. Uh, I think one of the changes that I made and that proved to be worth it was adding one Luke Skywalker out of aspect, because it's similar to regional governor in that aspect that you can play it without the penalty using U-wing, and it's sometimes worth it playing it from hand, even though it costs more. So that's one thing I changed. I also moved my change of cards to the main deck, and I've added one of the spicy cards in a single sneak attack, which can be very helpful in once again in close games in the late game scenarios, to either play Homeman, for example, or Reinforced Walker, which would is especially good. I think I've won one of the games against Sabine with that. I needed a healing badly, and I couldn't afford Homeman. I think it was like in normal way, so I sneaked attack it, and it proved to be the winning play. So yeah, and as for the cards I cut from the deck list, I think I removed one of the Traitoruses, both of the Akbars, or maybe it was both of Mon Mothmas, or one or maybe I cut both Mon Mothmas and Akbar. I don't really remember card to card how it went.
Yeah, I did that too. I did
So
this in my
basically something like that.
Yeah, I actually did that too. I think this is the trend we're seeing from hand players is like Momothma is just going away on the list. The Akbars is basically reduced to one just for the toolbox of Ewing reinforcements. This is like kind of a trend that we're seeing from most hand players. And yeah, I mean the look I've seen that before. I think it's definitely something that you're very happy to pick up from Ewing reinforcements. Uh, Me, as far as like toolbox of like Ewing, what I like to call like the Ewing reinforcement toolbox cards. I like to have like I usually prefer to have a combination of small units rather than one big units. I mean, obviously every situation is different, and I think in that sense this is why I'm very attached to Vanguard Haze because Vanguard Haze allows me to maintain this diversity of different like small units, this combination of this different small units, uh, and um, and still be able to have like this 4-4 for 2 in there. But it is definitely very situational, just like so. It's So one thing I wanted to ask you is that after your game against Rebel Resource, I realized that obviously there's a few things that you don't play that really helps against aggro, so notably the 3 copies of Garrido, basically having more Liberator Gunship in the main, having more Bright Hope. I think Bright Hope saved you so many times in that final. Would you consider playing more of them after you play against Rebels Resource, or you just feel like the matchup is just good anyway and you don't need to more help?
I still think it's a good matchup for me. I don't think I ever lost the best of three to aggro with this version of Han, even with one Liberator gunship and two Bright Hopes. So I might be I might consider putting another Bright Hope in sideboard. But other than that, I don't think I would change anything.
Okay.
Like besides the changes I already I already talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. So you think Syndicate Lackeys is better than Bright Hope in
Yeah,
this
yeah, I
matchup?
like Syndicate Luckies. Yeah, yeah. Luckies are great against Sabine going out there as a unit because they can instantly kill her. And yeah, I've liked this unit, and I've been playing this right from the start when I started using Han. I had at least one copy of Syndicate Luckies, like from day one.
Yeah, me, it's like I was playing originally, but that was even before the release of the game. I was playing Chewbacca, and then I went away from Chewbacca to play Lackey, and then I was playing with two Lackey in the main deck for a while, and then I placed them in the sideboard because I wanted to prioritize of having more anti-space. Because I think the way you lose games versus aggro is when you get overrun in space. So that's why I was playing. So my version plays 3 Falcon, 3 Bright Hope, 2 Gunship because I wanted to kind of have more I've because the way I lose game versus aggro is because I don't have space. Usually, it's the way that goes. But Lucky is so great against aggro because not only you get to one shot Sabine behind, you get yourself a 5-2 that puts a lot of pressure, and racing is often what it comes down to later on in the game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And besides, the Syndicate Luckies can basically kill and stay on the board against almost anything, maybe besides K3, K2, so
Yeah, yeah.
because
It's not
there's no
only against
other
Sabine;
unit that
it's just a
can.
genuinely powerful card.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you about so the Cunnings in the sideboard. How well did Cunning perform for you?
Not at all. I think I haven't cited them in even once. So they are they are gone.
Okay,
Can say
so
it was like an experiment. I wanted to check if they might be useful, but no, I I I don't think I haven't I cited them even once. So
I think Cunning is good in
it was
racing
a failed
situation.
experiment.
Yeah, I think Cunning is good in like racing situation. I was curious if you sided in against Ryan in the final.
No, no. I think I've only cited like two or three cards. It was Surprise Strike, Gunship, and Waylay, I think. And I changed the and I replaced one of the home ones with the third Reinforcement Walker
Mm,
because
yeah,
it heals immediately, and it's not always like that with home one.
yeah. It puts you out of at this stage of the game. The priority is to put yourself out of range of for a cause I believe in,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and basically Walker does a better job in this. Um, yeah. So okay, well, I think we've said quite a bit about the list, so thank you very much for your insights. But we're gonna keep going. We have a few things to cover. So here, this is Rebel Resource, uh, Blonde Sabine, so Sabine yellow list, and as you can see, it's a list that is worked on a tremendous amount. I think it's a list that was very built to be aggro. As you can see, it was playing the gunship, was playing two Chewbaccas. So it was really a list that was basically built to beat aggro. Um, and I think it's a very solid list. I mean, that's literally the list he won the 1K with. I don't know if he made any significant change to the list. I'm not going to talk too much about it because Rebel Resource has his own YouTube channel and is tremendously more qualified than me to talk about his own list because he's played it so much. And he did very well, I think. So he got some lucky game against Boba Green in the
Oh
top
yeah,
four.
that was crazy.
Yeah, it was quite rough. But then, I mean, he knows his deck very well. I mean, like I've seen him play in the final, and I think in the final the only misplay that he makes for the whole best of three, and those were quite long games, especially for aggro standard. I think the only mistake that he made was on his last four cards, I believe in. He does not play Surprise Strike on top of the deck, and I think Surprise Strike would not have guaranteed him the win, but it would have helped to have that Surprise Strike. He would have increased his win percentage by a lot at that stage of the game, where he decided to basically discard the Surprise Strike instead of putting it on top of his deck, and I think that was a mistake. But like outside of this, he played this very well. He's also shown the power of Sneak Attack. The fact you can use Sneak Attack on Fleet Lieutenant is very strong. Um, is very strong. But yeah, so yeah, very solid Liz played by someone who knows the deck inside out. It's always going to be a big threat, and this is the reason why I sometimes it can be very misleading, right? When you play test against like random people and you see, oh, I have a good matchup here, and then as soon as you start playing against someone who knows the deck very well, then the win percentage change completely. I don't know if you experienced that, Hippo.
Yeah. I think that's natural. That not all players are at the same level, you can say. And yeah, knowing your deck inside and out definitely helps with and ups the winning percentage.
Awesome. Well, so that's his list. And now I'm gonna go over like the big kind of learning. Every time there's a tournament happening, I like to kind of put a list of things that we've learned from it, kind of like the big takeaways. And these are my big takeaways. My first big takeaway is that the Boba Blue as a deck is a thing. Basically, when X2 posted that Boba Blue list, that Boba Blue control list, that was the first time I've ever seen someone playing Boba in a control deck. And I think it's safe to say that his deck is a real thing. His deck is very dangerous. It is basically a control deck. Like it has, I went over the list when I saw it first in my first video, and I've explained kind of like what how the list operates. But now that we've seen it going all the way through the semifinals, we can say that this list is very strong, and X2 also a very good player. It's a very difficult deck to play because it really is as much. It can really go from a control deck to the aggro mode, and it's not always obvious to know which plan is going to work better. But it's a very strong list because it basically says, oh, I'm going to be playing all the best things about playing a blue control deck, so the super laser blast, all the entrench, the vigilance win condition, and I'm also going to play like what's the best about Boba, which is the Boba into Fire Spray, which can be as much as a win condition and it is a way to stabilize the board and kill. So I think the idea was very clever, and the combination of vigilance and bounty hunter crew is extremely strong in a mirror of control, which is another big asset that this deck has. So it's a real thing. It's a thing that you're going to see in tournament, and I'm glad that it was featured for the first time on Take the Initiative, because Take the Initiative as always has this history of being a tournament where people bring new things to the table and try new things. And I'm glad that we've carried that tradition here with that new deck coming around and really being very successful. So this is definitely a real thing. You have to take this into account now as part of the meta. So very well done from X2 to be bringing new things to the table. I thought that he got. I think the only matchup where I feel like X2 should, like in the matchup versus Dylan, where Dylan was playing Emperor Red. I think this matchup should have been won by. Like I think in terms of, I think this game did not go the way I think it should be going in terms of like win percentage. Where because yeah, I think Emperor's Red at least after sideboard is very favored in my opinion. But outside of this, the deck just has shown that. But also this is how you see like the ability for a deck to win even very bad matchup is also how you see the strong decks. Like if a deck is able to win despite very bad matchup, that's a sign of a strong deck as well. I think the second big takeaway that I have is that Hand Green reinforced its status as a premier competitive deck. I think that I mean before I started playing the deck, before I won the season one, it was not really obvious. I was a lot of people obviously play the deck, but it was not really picked up by a lot of people, and it was not really making any results. Now we're seeing this deck played all over the place, whether it's in real life or in online, and in it's winning. It's winning consistently, which I think is a sign that the deck has reached a maturity. And I also believe that it's a very. I think you would agree with me, Hippo, that it's a very difficult deck to play. So it took a little bit of a while for people to understand how to play the deck, and therefore making performances with it.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, for me, one of the biggest advantages of Han is that it doesn't really have a very bad matchup. I know that for me, the very bad matchup is Krennic, but we talked about it a little bit, and other Han players don't really struggle against Krennic like that. And other than that, there aren't any bad matchups because Han is very solid against heavy control. He can easily beat aggro. He can go toe to toe with Boba Fett, the green version or the blue one or even the yellow. Although I think one of the other hardest matchups for me while playing Han is Boba Yellow.
Yeah, I think Boba Yellow and Boba Green is slightly unfavored. And I think the real bad matchups are going to be the Vader Greens and the Palpatine decks in general. I think those are like
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
yeah the very tight matchup. Um, Basically, if you get into late game versus Vader, you're gonna struggle. If you reach late game against Palpatine, you're gonna struggle. So those are, in my opinion, those are the bad matchups. But it has good matchup against the popular deck. It has good matchup versus aggro if it's built properly. And played properly as well, because it's not it's a matchup that plays completely differently than the other matchups. Like when you're playing against aggro, you almost feels like you're playing a different deck. I don't know if you agree with this, but um, so yeah, against aggro, it has a good matchup. Against most of the mid-range deck, against the Lukes, it's pretty good as well. And against and obviously it has a good matchup against control, and I think that's a big one. So it's not unbeatable by any means, but I think it is definitely a tier one deck, if that makes sense. Okay, so
For me, it definitely makes sense.
so my third big takeaway is Sabine Yellow is on the rise. So this is an observation that I'm making in general about the meta, not only focused on that tournament, but before Sabine Green was overwhelmingly the most played aggro deck, and then you got a bit of Leia Red as well, and Sabine Yellow was in a small minority. Uh, Now it's changing. Now we're seeing a lot of people playing Sabine Yellow. It's almost like a 50-50 in tournaments. So I've seen a lot of it's a lot of small tournaments, like a lot of store showdown. I can see that Sabine Yellow is performing toe to toe with Sabine Green. So is it representative of we're gonna see. We haven't seen any big tournament where Sabine Yellow still yet to perform in very big tournament, but we are seeing that Sabine Yellow is definitely on the rise, and there's a lot of people who consider Sabine Yellow to be the better aggro deck. So we'll see in the future if that's true. I don't know if you agree with this, Hippo.
Yeah, I definitely prefer Sabine Yellow because she has much more reach and can close out games even without anything on the table. Like you said, the play with sneak attack and fleet lieutenant is like instant 5 damage. But opponent, if he doesn't have sentinel, can do anything about that. Plus Falcon, obviously. Uh, I think she's a much better closer than the Green Sabine,
Yeah,
which only has for a cause.
yeah, but yes, I feel like kind of like the consensus is that so they're the green aggro deck, which are very explosive and that are very punishing. And those ones are, for example, the Leia Red. The Leia Red is an even more extreme example of this. It's like a deck that if you don't manage the threat, it will maul you. because it will attack with 2 units at once and it will kill you in 2 swings. Sabine Yellow is definitely kind of the more, as you said, the one has the most reach. That is kind of like saying, maybe I'm not going to be as punishing because I cannot do those kind of things. I don't have the Rebel Assault, or like my Rebel Assault is like more expensive. I don't have the same as Rebel Assault. I don't have the Leia's ability to really kill you in 2 swings, but I have the reach. I have this ability to deal damage out of nowhere, much more than other deck. Also, Surprise Strike is very helpful for this as well. Basically, the combinations Falcon plus Surprise Strike is just incredibly threatening. And the 30 HP base is very good in the mirror match. So you would think that basically in a deck that is able to attack with multiple units at once, like it would be a huge advantage in the mirror match. And it is a huge advantage in the mirror match because in the mirror match things don't really die because people are focused on racing. So if you're racing, Leia's ability on Rebel Assault is such a massive advantage. With that being said, the 5 extra HP you get on your base by playing a 30 HP base is a huge factor as well. So I think it's safe to say that Sabine Yellow is better positioned against Control, and if Control keep on seeing more and more play, it's safe to say that Sabine Yellow is going to be the best choice. But I'm not necessarily convinced that Sabine Yellow is better in every situation. I think there's definitely going to be certain environments and certain matchup where Sabine Green is more threatening. But we'll see how that goes. I'm not an aggro expert, so we'll see how things shape up. But it's going to be interesting. There's also Sabine Red, which I think is a little bit weaker. That also sees a little bit more play now. So we'll see how that works out. Is there anything else
But I
that?
but I think
Go ahead.
yeah, I think that like if we take into the account the new season of the league, I don't know if you're following the results, but I think that Lev, the only unbeaten player with 8 games in, is playing Sabine Red. I'm very curious about his list
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, that's going to be exciting. I mean, it's going to be. I think that it's safe to say that if he went 8-0 with his list, he's going to be he's going to be wanting to play that in the top cut. So it's going to be exciting.
Yeah,
Um, I mean,
yeah.
like the meta is just extremely open, and this is the thing that I think I want to make people aware is that the meta is so incredibly diverse that you cannot really say, oh, Sabine Yellow is better than Sabine Green because it's better against Control, because the meta is so incredibly diverse. Who knows? For all you know, the meta is going to be full of like mirror match and people playing like Boba Green and old school and old style decks. So in that, if Sabine Green was better when the game first came out, it's still good now. It's still good now, depending on the environment, because a lot of people are still playing the same decks that they were playing at release. They're still playing. You're still gonna see the Krennic Green. You're still gonna see the Boba Green. So we haven't talked about Boba Green, but Boba Green made it to the semifinal, and he could have very well made it to the final. So Boba Green is still very much there. There's still like the meta game is incredibly open. So I don't think there's a definitive better aggro deck. I think it just depends on the meta, and it depends on that. But I could be wrong. Maybe I'm going to be proven wrong, and maybe Sabine Yellow is going to be everywhere. We'll see how it works out. Is there anything else that you've learned from like a big takeaway or like a thing that you've learned from this tournament?
Yeah, from me, the biggest takeaway is what you just said when the meta is so open. But there's no, not so long ago we were all talking that the green boba will be all over the place, and he's not. He is still very strong, but like you said, it's so many different decks. And I play online. I play in a lot of like normal in real life tournaments because we have a huge local meta, and there are still some decks that take me by surprise because I haven't seen them at all. The emergence of Palpatine, for example, I still haven't played against yellow Palpatine. I've heard it's quite good,
It
but
is
yeah,
quite
it's
good, yeah.
it's it's great. It's great, and it's the thing that like makes me happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Anyway, congratulations for winning the top cut, and thank you so much for coming over to talk about your deck, so people can have a different perspective on hand green. Even though honestly our versions are not so different from one another, it's always interesting to see like the small different card choices that can make definitely a big difference in games. And It's always interesting to have a different perspective. So thank you so much. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. Not really. Not
Okay.
really. I think I.
Okay. Well,
Uh,
thank you everybody for following that video. If you like that content, please like and subscribe. And my coaching services are still open. If you guys want to check it out, it's gonna be in the description. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.